providing cover fire.
Let me ask you a question. What do you think of physical characters? And by extension, do you like Mika? Similar to a lot of Genshin players, I was very hopeful with Mika's release that we might be seeing a physical renaissance of sorts. That physical teams might make their way back into the meta in a big way. And spoilers, he really hasn't. But that's not to say he's bad, just that he didn't completely revive the physical archetype. I'll be completely honest. Making this video and even writing this script made me pretty depressed. I really wanted to show Mika off in a positive light and show off how strong physical teams could be. After several revisions of this script, many attempts in the Spiral Abyss, and some long and hard thought, I wanted to share my unbiased findings, give my take on physical teams and characters, and go over how Mika can fit into it all. So let's get into building physical teams proper, shall we? I wanted to preface this with that the way Mika fits into a physical team comp is very similar across different physical characters. So rather than talking about how to use Mika, let's talk about what you need for a solid physical team that uses Mika first. Firstly, you will need a cryo unit plus an electro unit to perform superconduct. This lowers the physical resistance in enemies and is absolutely required to make a physical character shine. Also, since your physical carry will be using their normal and charge attacks the majority of the time, having a way to increase that damage is very important. Yunjin, or even Bennett, can help get this done. Next, any non-catalyst user can deal physical damage, so the one that you choose should either have physical synergies or have high damage ratios on their normal or charged attacks. Finally, you'll want to think about using supports that need little on-field time, since your physical carry will often need to be on the field longer than other main DPSs traditionally do, especially ones like Eula or Razor. I've also put together a short list of things that can be considered, but aren't as required for a successful physical team. A good healer. In the context of Mika, he is a healer, but his healing is somewhat limited and not the strongest. So even if you're using him, you may consider having a second healer who can help pick up the slack. Next, you may consider characters who can give resistances to interruption, as physical characters' playstyle is often easily interrupted by a single big hit, which can be really annoying. Something else in the context of Mika is an attack speed steroid. Mika gives a fairly hardy amount of attack speed with his skill, and when you are working with physical characters, simply put, attack speed equals good. And finally, you will often find yourself with what I call a flex slot, a character that can be flexible depending on what you're doing. I find that having a character that can enable an extra elemental reaction can be good, such as freeze. But more often than not, you'll want someone who can deal with those pesky elemental shields that physical gets absolutely stonewalled by. But with all that, let's go over some physical carries that we currently have available and go over how I feel about them, especially alongside Mika. Firstly, I need to talk about Eula and Xinyan. With Eula, I think people would agree that as far as physical characters go, she is easily the best, solving her problems with power overwhelming. Unfortunately, I do not own her, so I could not test her alongside Mika, but on paper, an attack speed buff plus a bonus to physical damage seems like a pretty good deal. Now, the reason I want to mention Xinyan alongside Eula is because even though I own Xinyan, I haven't built her yet. And honestly, I don't really think she comes into her own as a physical carry until her Constellation 6, which I also don't have. When that happens though, I will be exploring different Xinyan builds, but until then, you'll just have to believe me that I don't think her and Mika are going to work together very well. Next up is Rosaria, who has a lot of physical synergies built into her kit, and being cryo makes setting up superconduct actually very easy. After that, we have Razor, who is the premier 4-star physical character, and is actually pretty good just on his own. Mika will surely put him over the top, right? Anyway, finally is Chi-Chi. Huh? What are you doing here? Anyway, now in the order that I tested them, here we go. Rosaria. Being that she was my first character that I ever mained, I actually had high hopes for her. For her, I used Raiden Shogun to help with energy and apply Superconduct, Yunjin for a normal attack buff, and of course Mika for his attack speed steroid and physical damage buff. I will say I was pleasantly surprised by the amount of damage that I could do. Full disclosure, I did not record this team in the Spiral Abyss, however, it was okay at best. It had survival issues, and really punctuated how rough this Abyss cycle was for physical team comps. But this was only just the beginning. Razor. This was the character I was expecting to work the best. Using Rosaria as a cryo support for Superconduct, and Shincho as a possible freeze, I thought that this team might actually hold its own even in this Abyss, but it was a struggle from start to finish. As I threw myself at floor 12 over and over and over again, I slowly began to realize that it was absolutely clearable. But with my team and characters as they were, I wasn't going to be getting 36 stars like this. Trying different characters in the flex spot, switching artifacts, nothing really seemed to make a noticeable difference. This is where the sadness started to set in. I really wanted this to work, but it wasn't coming together. So I did the most sensible thing I could think of. I decided to try something a little bit unorthodox. So firstly I thought, let's just ignore Mika's physical bonuses and focus on his attack speed. So I added him as a healer for an Ayato-based Burgeon team, and the results were enlightening. It was actually good. It felt really good. Mika's attack speed buff on a character like Ayato is extremely noticeable and may honestly be the best use for Mika at the moment if you don't have Eula or any of his constellations. I was shocked, to say the least. So to sum things up, Mika didn't bring a whole new light to physical team comps, at least at Constellation 0. I firmly believe that with his constellations, he will comfortably fit into a variety of physical teams. I also want to say that I did not put the kind of investment into the whole team that I think is needed. Overall, I think physical teams require a little bit more TLC than other kinds of teams. I want to believe that with some slightly better artifacts, maybe a crown or two put into them, these physical team comps can still hold up, but for now, as they are, I am unable to get them working to a place where I am satisfied. It's also worth noting how unkind this current Abyss is for physical characters. There are lots of shields, anti-shields, and enemies with very short damage windows. All things you probably don't want to see with the kinds of teams that I was trying to put together. But I did try one last thing with Mika. At my lowest point, in the deepest pit of depression, I decided that the only reasonable thing left to do was to try physical Chi-Chi built alongside Mika. And you know what? It wasn't bad. I'm serious, actually. Physical Chi-Chi with a bunch of buffs to support it, it actually felt pretty good. I was using a sort of physical and healing hybrid build, and the damage was decent. I felt completely safe the whole time, and I could have a laugh at the idea of Chi-Chi just battering her way through the Abyss. Do I think this is some crazy off-meta team that will change everything? Hell no. But I did have a lot of fun doing it. But it got me thinking. Actually, let me ask you a question. Do you want to build Chi-Chi? So I don't normally do outros like this, but I felt like I should this time, because I wanted to just thank people who've been watching, and especially those who've been commenting and sharing their stories and stuff. It's actually been really cool to see. And also really cool seeing people join me on my streams, actually. I've been streaming here on YouTube for a little while now, Monday to Friday. And it's just been cool having people to hang out and just talk to and, you know, come up with ideas and workshop teams and all that kind of stuff. It's just been really cool. So want to say thanks to everyone who's watching and all that. So cheers, as always. and next time I think we'll be working on a special project. And also, for the first time, I've never actually done this before, but I'm going to just encourage, if you liked what you saw and you like what I'm doing here, just maybe subscribe. I had an idea that if I managed to actually get say, 1,000 subscribers, I'll try building and making a whole video all about Aloy. Or something like that. I don't know. We'll figure it out later. Cheers.